A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series, Natural Medicine. I keep saying that dialogue should be possible in a democratic country. And it is. And that's why today I dare to approach a topic where, unfortunately, there's hardly any dialogue. But I'm confronted with a lot of viewer inquiries about a topic. What should you do if you have been vaccinated, even though you really didn't want to? Yeah, this is a sensitive subject. I know that very well. The decision's made. Then you no longer have to decide or discuss this topic. But what does the psyche do when you see yourself under so much pressure, put yourself through this confrontation, that you didn't really want it and really rather suffer from it? I'd like to discuss that today with the head doctor of the Swiss Mountain Clinic, Dr. Petra Wiechel. Stay tuned. Yeah, with that, a very warm welcome, dear Petra. So this topic really hurts me, I have to say, when people feel compelled to do something they don't want to do. We don't have to discuss the usefulness. That was imposed on us by the state. They said, that's a good thing. It's the path we've chosen, which I hope we can look forward to with satisfaction. Hopefully. But the people who say, I don't want that, and now I have to do it for business reasons, for existential reasons, and deal with this question every day. Have I done myself any good? Or am I getting sick now? I mean, you have to say that too, because it comes up all the time. And that from psychoneuroimmunology, it's always said that the mind, psyche, has an effect on the body. And here we should somehow be able to offer an approach to helping people. What's your point of view?
But it's nice that you're the one who thinks about it. That is beautiful. It's really just beautiful, because we humans should never do is put power into resistance. And by that I mean we've made a decision. And we made that decision because it was important to us. Because otherwise we might have lost our jobs or whatever. That might have brought other problems. And now we just have to accept that decision. It's like that with everything. People who don't accept death, people who don't accept a separation, will manoeuvre themselves into a really difficult health situation. Because, of course, my perception of life is always tied to my own body chemistry. And the body can't tell if it's pressure and stress that it's putting on itself because it's having doubts about the decision, because every decision you have made brings peace of mind. The worst thing is when you can't decide. But once you've made a decision, you have to find peace in being honest with yourself. And that's important, because the moment you doubt if that was right by questioning, if you could have done it differently, it's too late anyway. So, and there are enough people that will be absolutely fine. And there don't need to be any dark occurrences that await me in the future. Now, the decision has been made, and now you have to do everything to keep the body in a good and stable situation. And the fear is actually the biggest demon of my physical health right now. This must not happen, because fear is actually in the category of many things that burden us in life. Also from the toxic side, environmentally toxic side. But fear is the worst, because fear sets mechanisms in motion unconsciously, which we have, of course, known in evolution, and which manoeuvre a cascade of situations or reactions into my body, which no longer allow the body to maintain balance. That's the whole question. The whole stress cascade, all the stress hormones going up. That can be for a short time, that's no question. I can ask myself the questions, but for God's sake, I mustn't let this worry go on, because afterwards it's self-directed. And the body can actually no longer get back to its primary basic tasks. It's in a loop, My blood pressure is rising. My blood circulation is getting worse. My exhaustion is inevitable. My stress hormones are depleting. All of this cannot be swept under the carpet. And that's why I can only appeal to people to stand by this decision now. And that, of course, they take everything into their own hands, which also stabilises their health.
Then we'd really approach this topic in two ways. What can I do for my psyche, and what can I do for my body? The question that comes up to me again and again. Part 2, physically, how can I discharge it again? If I get something, can I get it out of my body again? We would discuss that in the second topic. But let's stay with topic 1, the psyche. Extremism on both sides is always bad. That always means I fight against the other point of view. I once learned that democracy means making decisions for a majority, but always dealing with the opposition and trying to find a consensus through dialogue. Today, I see democracy more with an oppression of a minority, which is actually a pity. But we can easily solve this conflict by always looking at what is good on the other side. And the opposing party too, what is good there from their arguments. And when we do that in relation to fear, and think about why did the other side decide that I have to do it, and maybe pull out a few positive aspects here, we'd be able to reduce our own fear a bit, wouldn't we? Well, let me rearrange the question. Look at the government's point of view. What arguments they bring, and think about where I can reason with which information from their point of view. So if I put my focus on this point, I can also reduce my own fear again on this topic.
Yes, but I think the fear that is fuelled in advance, it is not to justify that. I think it was more the fear now. I have decided to have a vaccination.
Yeah, you've already got it.
That's what I was about to say.
Well, I have to be able to reduce this fear somehow. It's in the genes, in the body, and I put energy into it because, well, I'm scared. So the problem isn't getting smaller, it's actually getting bigger. And then people call me, they say, Mr. Glog, what can I do? I've no idea.
Yes, of course, in hindsight, the first thing is that you have to accept the decision. I think we just discussed that. And I can no longer manoeuvre myself into it. But the second thing is that, of course, I have to know that any vaccination or anything that comes from exogenous, of course, also means a burden for my body at first. And there you brought up the subject of detoxification. Of course, we have a lot of experience also from vaccination discharge. And that is now a very, very banal and very big view of vaccination discharge or detoxification in general. But these are questions that in every case should sometimes be asked beforehand. Can my body do this? But if this is the case now, then you should deal with these questions in a very targeted manner. How can I actually? It's not just the vaccination, it's often also the things that are in the vaccination. So all the additives, whether aluminium or whatever, thiomersal. This means that I always subject my body to detoxification. And in advance, I can already think about how high my load might be. Is it higher than usual?
Oh, but that basically makes sense with every vaccination, getting these additives out of the body again.
That's what I was about to say. That would be responsible. It also makes a lot of sense now. For example, to take selenium and zinc very intensively. Or zeolite, of course. Zeolite is a rock mineral which also has the colloidal silica that naturally binds incredibly toxic things through its wonderful sponge function, balances and stabilises the entire mineral milieu in my body. Those are things I can do.
Now that you say it has so many additives in it or toxins, maybe also put this in relation. Apparently these things also have to be a part to force a reaction out of the body.
Of course.
Just that we can put that in perspective a bit. The reaction was there, the effect is fulfilled. Now it has to come out.
Exactly. And that has done its job. Aluminium is an effect enhancer, there is no question about that. But you can take a lot of the burden off it if you just act now. And with it, when you act, you appear active and not passive and wait for what is coming and get scared. That's what you can do. And for example, we can now show a slide. The basic element for our detoxification is, of course, the liver.
Then let's look at the liver.
The liver, you can see it a bit when the liver is part of the detoxification process, which it primarily carries out as the most important recycling organ is loaded or is overloaded. It can sometimes be the case that a vaccination like this can overwhelm the liver. Then there are multiple. These are just a few diseases listed that the viewer can now read, but those are things. For example, they are now saying post-COVID syndrome at this time. Maybe it's just overloading of the liver. So stay completely relaxed and maybe make sure that you bring your body back to a good level of stability, that it can deal with the burden, which might just be too much for some and for others. Very responsible to always keep an eye on it. And if you show the next slide, you can of course see that the liver is also dependent on good detoxification. It can only do this if it knows that every single step is well taken care of. And if people are selenium deficient or in vitamin B12 deficiency or in zinc deficiency, then it works less well. That means all the things that the liver also needs, that our body needs to detoxify every cell. Glutathione and zeolite are a great base. That's what needs to be done now, and also is important for those people to do who are burdened.
You once told me on a show that the mother of all organs is the liver. So that is, when the liver has loads and its functions are reduced, then ultimately many diseases come about.
Of course, and it has to be intoxicated again and again. You always have to know that the one that makes all the fat-soluble things water-soluble. But if it does that insufficiently as part of its detoxification phase 1, phase 2, because things are missing at certain control points, then the body has to endure it. It has to absorb this into the connective tissue. It burdens itself with it. And the first one that actually says, leave it with me, is the liver. And that's why, for me, it has this mother function, because hundreds of tasks depend on it.
You know, for the first 50 years of my life, I didn't even know that you could do something for the liver. Now I know. I once did a liver detox with you and saw that you can do a lot there. And after such a week, you feel as if you've had 3 years of vacation.
Yes, and above all, you'll see what illness suddenly takes a path in the right direction. If that's something you really care about, and what the liver also stores in its parenchyma and in the many bile ducts, and thus brings itself to a certain performance limit, which has long since ceased to be the measure of what it actually wants and needs.
I want to steer the conversation into the inospheresis, because I was allowed to do that once. I learned from the inospheresis that it is blood washing, like dialysis. Only in the inospheresis, the blood circulation in the brain is also cleaned. Is that correct?
You have to say it like that because it's about replacing the plasma. That means we separate 30% of the plasma, the liquid part of the blood. And all the blood comes out 1.5 times. That's about 200 millilitres per minute. That is, these things that we can collect in the filter were ultimately released from the organism into the blood. I used to think it won't be that valuable to filter the blood at all. Toxins are in the connective tissue, toxins are in the cells. But I have to correct myself there. The body perceives this process and follows suit. That's why we always try very hard to integrate the iniuspheresis, and not to say let's do iniuspheresis twice and then it's wonderful, but that we know which own detoxification is available to the body. Where do I have to support it? Can I release toxins from the connective tissue beforehand? Are they freer? Will they be carried along much more easily by the suction? And of course, we see that we are also doing brain pheresis with patients with neurodegeneration, with dementia. That things will change then. And with normal chelation therapy, which of course binds aluminium, light metals, heavy metals, according to Joachim Mutter, only after the 30th, 40th heavy metal infusion we reach this level. The body is always able to detoxify in a really tough hierarchy. It does this in the context of the metals, and it also does this in the connective tissue. And these are really big and long processes. And sometimes people are quite impatient and say, I've had it for so long. But you shouldn't underestimate that, because it can only start its own work when a dimension of detoxification has taken place, where it can resume its old program unmoved and regulatory free. And unfortunately, that is not in nature's plan, to keep something inside like aluminium and not being able to do anything with it. This is difficult for it. In evolution, it has also passed on tasks for many things, such as calcium. That didn't exist in the past either, when life was in the water. The calcium today as a high quality mineral, what we need for our entire pathogen transmission, for cell metabolism, for bone metabolism. Nature has now given the body this opportunity. And I find that very interesting when you see how difficult, how patient, but also how much time life takes to get back until it ever reaches a symptomatic threshold. How many years, sometimes decades, the body still grants you a life that you were actually able to live quite unencumbered. That's why I always find it so unbelievably beautiful when people come and say, I have to do something now. I don't live in a glass box, and I think I'm laying the key to tomorrow now. And that is a very nice thinking, responsible.
You said it nicely when I think of the image of antibiotics or preservatives, and yet we still have bacteria that survive. Thank God. Well, anyway, back to the topic. So when I actively do a detox for my body, for example, a chelate detoxification, or this premier class in the inispheresis supplemented with zeolites or spirulina and so on, then I see that I'm actively doing something for myself. The phase one, the fear of what I have done to myself, in quotation marks, should also reduce again. I know I'm doing something good for myself.
Well, I think the fear actually arises in me. I can think about good things, but I can also think about bad things. And when fear rules me, then I'm in a pretty deep hole. If I can give an example of a tumour patient, the tumour patient sometimes has a really bad prognosis which is revealed to them, where I say simply, who dares to talk like that? No doctor may rise up on a platform from God and give them a prognosis, but it happens. And there are people who do not feel empowered to decide how long they must live. Or can and may, but simply say, you are not God. And tell me, what can I do to help my body deal with this disease? We must now look at the situation completely honest and realistic. But what's in my hands? There is a lot to do. And through this mental strength in which they withdraw the peace again and don't only see the end through fear and terror and prognosis, which of course sets the switch to stress, when they turn it around and say, I just want life now, what's left for me? Still incredibly enjoy, and I'm thankful for everything, then that's something I want to say to every human being, because of death or the end is sometimes much faster than we all think. And that's why changing what I actually hold in my hands lies in the here and in the moment. And when people are able to give the body a deep rest and actually only do themselves good with what they desire, and that's not a farce now, but that is a great also human acceptance. It's unbelievable how long it takes. I can't believe how long. And a lot of people tell me since it took that turn, the time for my husband or for my mother was more intense than the 70 years before. And people don't believe what they could do. They just live with the thinking that it still has to be a long time. And I believe you have to understand that you don't invest any energy in what cannot be changed. I don't mean to say that my health suddenly stagnated. Life changes with every day. But these processes that your body then pulls out, because it knows you say yes to life. You want again, you should again, you will. That's incredible, unbelievable.
I read a quote today. I believe it was a spiritual quote. No idea. It went like, you have so many worries in life, but most are never fulfilled. It's like that. You give so much energy to worries, problems in the future, the past, and so on. But it doesn't come true that way.
Yeah, that reminds me that I read something similar when I was a young student. A man climbed a very big mountain, and then he looked at life out of this perspective and deeply and wistfully whined about the fact that he actually hasn't really come to life yet, because that's so trivial and small. What did he overrate? What did he predict every day that his life might do to him? And he got very old.
But that's something too today. This whole divisive issue that we're kind of talking about now is just a vibrant thing. A polarising topic where people actually get scared and worried, which hopefully won't be prophesied. We can't change it anyway, it's decided. But the third point, which I read again and again from certain channels or people ask me and say, well, if that's the case, there is something I can do. For example, it's said that there are substances in it that are so-called electron thieves and promote inflammatory processes. Well, if I hear it like that, and if that were the case, I can just supply electrons, if only through a high-quality diet.
Yes, of course, high-quality polyphenols. I can minimise inflammation by being high in omega-3. I can reduce inflammation through vitamin E. That's all something. There are enough options there.
I don't have to wait now to see if this is prophesied or not.
Of course not.
I don't have to put any energy into it. I don't have to stir up fears. I can do something right now. What would be a good way for this?
Well, of course. That's why I say no one is a victim of their life and not their sickness, but there are always things that they can put into their hands. And with that, I can slowly overcome fear because I act and I'm active and I take it into my hands. That is not conveyed to me. I have to take it from somewhere and look for it. Thanks to broadcasters like yours, this is, of course, incredible progress for people in matters of education. But it's not like arbitrarily believe I'm at the mercy of a bad situation. I cannot say that.
So we've built the whole show on 3 pillars now. On the one hand, fear. We get the subject of fear well under control by deciding not to give it any energy or by our actions. Then 2, to relieve the body. of these substances or other substances that are already dormant in us through the air and so on, or through the food. We just have to relieve the liver or the blood, the connective tissue. Simply detoxification.
Yes, and maybe much, much more. But we should do it. We really should do it.
And the third point is to supply us with energies, minerals, zinc, you said, selenium, you said. I just think just give things that give energy, are electron donors in a world where worry also produces acid in our bodies, just adding the opposite, bases.
Of course. And that is again the big topic of a healthy lifestyle. Our body is quite modest. It just wants everything to be balanced and of high quality. And it doesn't have any higher standards. But of course, what it longs for most is to be able to do all those things for us. It is 100% self-regulating, and being able to do this unencumbered depends on whether we are at peace with ourselves. And that is why it is the greatest and most important requirement. Then neither antioxidants nor vitamin E will help, nothing at all. If you stay stressed with yourself, then it directs this energy in the wrong direction, because that's how it learned during evolution. But if you can do that by consensus and these things now, if you take matters into your own hands very responsibly, then we can only make good predictions.
Great. Thank you very much, dear Dr. Petra Wiechel. Thank you for this broadcast. And you too, dear viewers. At this point, I would like to remember Dr. Otto Warburg, who once said that all pain, inflammatory processes and diseases come from an acidic environment, and fear eventually produces acid too. And constantly worrying about such problems can also make us sick in this regard. Poisoning, toxins in our body can make us sick. Therefore, a detox is always of great benefit, no matter which environmental pollution we are also otherwise exposed to. And the third point is to really treat yourself to some sensible food, so that we can really be supplied with polyphenols, with plant substances, or also with high-quality minerals, which also have an alkaline effect on us, in order to counteract this acidity which is produced again and again. And now I'll ask Petra again, did I summarise everything correctly?
Very beautiful.
Thank God, wonderful. All the best and see you next time.